Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In my 2.5 years as ranking member of the Immigration Subcommittee, I believe that this is the first hearing that the majority has held that is not focused on undocumented immigrants. I'm glad the majority realizes that there is an entire legal immigration system to discuss, a system that has not been updated in 35 years. We need a modernized system that meets our 21st century needs while also protecting American workers. Many of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle love to say that they support legal immigration and people coming in, quote, the right way. Well, this is their chance. Unfortunately, just over 150 days into the second Trump administration, the Trump administration has been making it exceedingly clear that it opposes all immigration, including legal immigration. Across the country, we have seen students picked up by masked immigration agents in unmarked cars, taken to detention facilities with no warning, and given limited information as to why they are being deported. The administration has revoked thousands of student visas as a weapon to stifle political dissent, restrict due process, and enforce an exclusionary and nativist vision of America that runs counter to everything our institutions of higher learning stand for. And just last week, video of masked ICE agents violently beating the father of 3 U.S. Marines has absolutely shocked the conscience of Americans across the political spectrum. The administration's actions to close off legal pathways will actually hurt America's ability to innovate and attract the talent we need. And make no mistake, they are not about national security, and we know this because just last month, Secretary of State Rubio announced plans to, quote, aggressively revoke student visas of Chinese students, all in the name of national security. And yet just 2 weeks later, President Trump, in announcing a so-called trade deal with China, said Chinese students would still be able to attend universities in the United States, even noting, quote, it has always been good with me. After a pause, the United States has resumed interviews for F, J, and M visas, but added new screening of the applicants' social media. These visas cover more than just students. They apply to physicians, university researchers, and au pairs, many of whom come to work for military families and others. And then earlier this month, President Trump issued a proclamation restricting or limiting the entry of nationals from 19 countries. In total, the 19 countries subject to these discriminatory bans have a combined population of over 475 million people. According to State Department data, the proclamation has the potential to block at least 34,000 green cards from being issued and over 125,000 non-immigrant visas from being issued every single year. Recent reporting also tells us that the Trump administration is considering adding an additional 36 countries to that list, 25 of which are from Africa. These countries may be subjected to partial or even full travel bans if they do not meet certain benchmarks over the next 2 months. And alarmingly, it appears that the Trump administration is attempting to coerce some of these countries into signing third country removal agreements to keep themselves off the ban list. The Trump administration has also stripped hundreds of thousands of individuals of their lawful parole or temporary protected status. Many of these people came lawfully from Nicaragua, Haiti, Cuba, and Venezuela, or fled these cruel regimes. Now, the Trump administration is actually making them undocumented and trying to send them back to their home countries where they may be abused or tortured. Now, it's not just African, Asian, or Latin American countries. Every day, it seems we hear a new horror story of Customs and Border Protection stopping and detaining someone at an air or land port who is from Canada or Europe. And often, they then wrongly send those people to ICE detention for weeks. This includes a German national on a fiancé visa who spent over 2 weeks in an ICE detention center because he and his U.S. citizen spouse simply took a day trip to Mexico. Or at the Canadian border, a backpacker from Wales spent nearly 3 weeks at a detention center over confusion related to her visa before being allowed to fly home at her own expense. A Canadian woman on a work visa detained at the Tijuana border who spent 12 days in detention before finally being able to return home. And here's the kicker. A prime motivation of these detentions appears to be to overfill detention beds at private detention facilities that are run by for-profit corporations that bankroll Republican campaigns. These for-profit facilities are rife with abuse because they're actually incentivized to cut corners so that they can reap enormous profits, all paid for by the American taxpayer. The path forward for America is a legal immigration system that is modernized, fair, and adequate to meet the needs of our families and our economy. Attacking legal immigration, student visas, workers with valid visas, even sweeping up U.S. citizens, that's not just morally wrong, it makes absolutely no sense. Making America less welcoming as a nation is already having a real impact. The United States will lose out $12.5 billion in tourism alone this year. Students and top scientists and researchers don't want to come to a country that suppresses their free speech rights or discriminates against them for what their home repressive governments do. That should not be what America is. I look forward to hearing from all our witnesses today, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. I now recognize the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Raskin, for an opening statement.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very kindly, and thank you to all the witnesses for being with us today. There is more to immigration than border enforcement, as the ranking member of the subcommittee just said, and it's a good thing that our friends are waking up to that. President Trump and Stephen Miller's ambition to deport 12 million people from the country has been a terrible failure on its own terms, but even in its failure, it has turned our society upside down. It has terrorized both citizens and non-citizens, destabilized and divided our communities, wrecked small businesses who've lost their workers, and trashed our Constitution for everybody. It's gotten so bad that Donald Trump even seems to have recognized that his policies don't fit reality. 2 weeks ago, he gave the game away by acknowledging that hundreds of thousands of undocumented aliens working on the farms and in the fields are, quote, good longtime workers, and that he'd been lobbied both by his agriculture secretary and by large agricultural interests to stop the ICE raids on farms as they are spreading panic and keeping a majority of the workforce from showing up at work. So he decided he would stop enforcing the mass dragnet ICE raids there and invoke the same logic for the restaurant sector, also heavily dependent on undocumented people. Of course, it would apply equally then to the construction sector, landscaping and gardening, nursing, you name it. The vast majority of immigrants, even those here illegally, are not rapists and criminals, but hardworking people, essential to our economy, just looking to make a better life for themselves. Think of the dreamers. So it's good for us to be having the first immigration hearing in memory, not on enforcement tactics at the border or in our communities, but instead about visas. Alas, the president's record on visas is riddled with the same bursts of extremism and dogmatism and fanaticism that have made his enforcement measures so unpopular. He and his administration have tortured our laws and trampled our Constitution to kick out permanent resident green card holders and students and target universities who voice opinions that he disapproves of. As part of its effort to undertake a hostile takeover of America's colleges and universities, the administration interrupted interviews for student and exchange visitor visas. The result, about 15% of foreign doctors slated to begin their work at American teaching hospitals around the country were unable to get their visas in time to start the medical year next month, all at a time when we have a serious doctor shortage in the country that threatens access to care. And the monstrous reconciliation bill threatens to slash Medicaid funding on which rural hospitals rely. The administration has also recently implemented its xenophobic travel ban to unilaterally ban entrance to the country for all nationals of 19 different countries, with minor exceptions. Categorically denying visas to nationals of these countries does not make us safer or freer or more prosperous. It cements us in the eyes of the world as a vindictive, isolationist, and increasingly undependable and authoritarian country. The travel ban will likely have significant economic consequences by restricting travel and migration from the targeted nations. In 2022, at least 298,000 non-citizens from countries affected by the new travel ban arrived in the U.S. Most of them came to the U.S. temporarily, spending money as tourists or as students, fueling our economy. The following year, households with nationals from the targeted countries collectively earned $3.2 billion in income, paid $715 million in federal, state, and local taxes, and held $2.5 billion in spending power. Donald Trump also paused the refugee program, claiming the entry of these thoroughly vetted and re-vetted individuals would be detrimental to the United States. But then he allowed white Afrikaners to apply via a Google form and to undergo an expedited process to come to the U.S. as refugees. And it should shock no one to learn that after they arrived, reporters were able to dig up numerous anti-Semitic posts from the refugees. One of them had never been subjected, apparently, to the new anti-Semitism screen being used for other visa candidates. The title of this hearing is Restoring Integrity and Security to the Visa Process. How does any of this restore integrity or security? These random pauses, arbitrary bans, ad hoc detentions do nothing to improve security or integrity in our process. President Trump has turned our visa system into a terrain of caprice and selective punishment he can wield against his chosen political enemies and use to demonize and scapegoat immigrants, including visa recipients. This war on immigrants is designed to distract us from the fact that they're trying to cut 14 million Americans off of Medicaid, destroying small businesses with chaotic and unlawful tariff policies, gutting federal agencies and programs charged with protecting Americans against scams and frauds, and using the pardon power to transfer more than $1 billion from the victims of crime to the perpetrators of crime. Sometimes the president's had his lucid moments on immigration. During his first term, while saying he wanted to build a big, beautiful wall, he said the wall would have a big, very beautiful door, signifying his support for legal immigration. In brief, lucid moments like these, I try to find hope that we can work together across the aisle to focus on a secure border, the removal of immigrants convicted of serious crimes and public safety threats, a pathway to citizenship for the law-abiding, tax-paying, undocumented immigrants who Trump recently called very good long-time workers, and a modernized immigration system that will make it easier to come here lawfully while protecting American workers. We've come very close to doing this in the past. We can do it again. Tom Paine, who arrived in the country in 1774, fell in love with America when he got here. He said this land will become an asylum to humanity. Not an insane asylum, mind you, but a place of refuge for people seeking freedom from religious and political and economic persecution and discrimination from all over the world. So let's live up to the original vision of the founders. This is a nation made up of immigrants and the descendants of people who were enslaved and of the original Native Americans. But this is a land of immigration, a land of immigrants, and a land of laws. We can make it all fit together, and I hope we can work together on a bipartisan basis to make that happen. Yield back, Mr. Chairman.